Hey y'all, and welcome to Politabrawl. My name is Brian, and this MAGA warrior from South Dakota shuts down the CNN hack over one of the greatest lies that the Democrats have been trying to spew about Medicare. Let's dive in.
You know, the U.S. debt is more than $36 trillion. And there was an analysis by one group, the Center for Responsible Federal Budget, that said the bare bones tax proposal that came out on Friday, before more provisions were added to it, would add $5 trillion to annual deficits. So you heard the conservative criticism right there. So how could the Republicans claim to be the party of fiscal responsibility and vote for this bill?
Well, you can put me in the camp of those who would like us to cut more. I do think there's a possibility that this bill could get more conservative as it goes along. Here's how we get out of this debt problem, because we are in a real four-alarm fire debt problem. We have to grow the American economy at 3% or more, and we have to reduce the rate of increased spending by 1% or less. You cannot grow the economy at 3% if you don't extend these tax cuts. If you increase taxes on 80% of American families, we're going to be in trouble. So the bill is not perfect as it is. I'd like to see some more cuts.
But if you add more cuts, that could add other problems along the way. But I want to show you what Chip Roy said about this. He's one of the hardliners who is opposed to this bill. He says the bill does not meaningfully reduce the deficit. He said it leaves more than $20 trillion in additional debt in 10 years. He said, does the bill offer any transformative changes on Medicaid or otherwise? He said, currently no. Does the bill fully repeal the Inflation Reduction Act to stop the devastatingly bad projects being implemented in my district? He says, no. He wants major changes. Should the party make these changes to win over Chip Roy?
First off, I would say Chip Roy is a true fiscal conservative like myself. He makes a lot of good points. I do feel like he is selling short some of the real reforms in Medicaid. Getting able-bodied young people without dependents at home into the workplace is a major reform. We have lots of literature over the course of the last 40 years on how well they work in SNAP and on TANF. We don't have that kind of literature in Medicaid. And I think we've got a real opportunity here to help grow American prosperity and make it so that more people can realize the American dream. But the other thing we're doing major from reform is we're putting a stop. We're not going to allow states to continue to play games with these provider taxes and these state-directed payments. That is a big saver, and it's just all a gimmick. And we really need to hold the line on those gimmicks.
But speaking of Medicaid, you have roughly 130,000 South Dakotans on Medicaid. The Democrats asked the Congressional Budget Office, a nonpartisan scorekeeper, to analyze what they believe was going to be in the bill. Based on that analysis, the CBO said nearly 14 million Americans could lose their health insurance. Now, I know Republicans say that there's some changes to it, but people could lose their health insurance, including in your state. Could you support a bill that kicks some people off of Medicaid?
Manu, you have fallen for the trap.
No, this could impact people's insurance, could it not?
They asked specifically about not renewing the premium tax credit on the ACA exchanges. And so when you ask CBO a ridiculous question, you're going to get a ridiculous answer. But let's pare that down. Let's just say, okay, Dusty, maybe it's not 13 million. Maybe the Democrats cooked the books on that. But what about if there are 3 million? That means, to the extent that the Medicaid reforms are about making sure that illegal immigrants aren't on the program and that able-bodied people who refuse to work are kicked off, that means we've got millions of able-bodied folks who refuse to work.
How many people in South Dakota would lose their Medicaid benefits from this bill?
We know in South Dakota that we have work requirements for able-bodied young people who aren't pregnant, who don't have any disabilities, who don't have young people at home. We have those work requirements today in place on SNAP, on TANF, and we know they work. And we know that very few people get kicked off those programs because state government knows they have to have skin in the game. They have to help these folks find jobs or volunteer or be in a training program or go to school. You cannot escape poverty without some combination of work and education.
Dusty just destroyed the best attack vector the Democrats have had, at least at the state and local level, against Republicans across the country. And here it is, plain as day. I think this ends the debate once and for all, which I'm very thankful for, because I'm tired of hearing this nonsense over and over and over. And that nonsense is that Medicare and Medicaid are going to get these drastic cuts that are going to hurt the poor. The reality is, most red states which use these programs have work requirements, and then they have other requirements in order to ensure that people aren't just collecting benefits without, actually working towards something. There is something good about labor, no matter where it is. From cleaning toilets, to serving in Congress, to serving in the military, to flipping burgers. There is something about labor that is noble and inherent to the human spirit. And the Republican Party actually cares about that, because the Democrats would rather pay off the plebs. I know, I'm wearing a Senate People of Rome shirt. I'm going to work that in whenever I can. But instead of paying off the people at the bottom tier, you're incentivizing them to work, get a career, and they're right there at the end. That wonderful line of getting out of poverty requires work and education, and the Republicans care about that more than the Democrats do. Because the Republicans believe that at the local level, it is easier to administrate and give a better curriculum. We've seen what happens when Democrats take control of your kids. They turn them into mindless zombies, and they go out to college and turn into these completely unrecognizable cretins. This is something that the Republican Party has had difficulty dealing with because the Democrats have been screaming about it for years. I heard it down at the state capitol time and time again. When are the Republicans going to expand Medicare and Medicaid? The reality is, if we do that, we have incentivized poverty. We can't do that. FDR did that with Social Security and the New Deal, which turned out to be a raw deal. LBJ did that with the Great Society. And even by the 1980s, just a short decade and a half later, Democrats, even at the federal level, had to admit that the Great Society was destined to fail. There was no way to get Americans out of poverty by constantly giving them handouts instead of, a hand up. And that's what Dusty is talking about here, which, by the way, a guy named Dusty from South Dakota out there on the Great Plains, trust me, you want to trust someone with that kind of name. You don't get that nickname or even first name without sort of earning it. And Dusty is out there busting these Democrat myths time and time again. And so this CNN host has to try everything he can to see if he can get Dusty and knock him off his game. And it doesn't work. It does not work, ladies and gentlemen. This guy understands how to play this game. This is the kind of guy, just based on a brief knowledge of him, I've only covered him a handful of times and I love this dude. He looks like he knows how to handle himself behind closed doors. That's called boardroom presence. This guy can handle himself at the local and federal level. Then he's got some basic charisma, which means he can give a good speech, but he's media savvy. He knows what needs to be done here. The CNN host actually ain't too bad at his job. He's constantly trying to throw a couple of jabs wherever he can, shadow box around the issues, and he even brings up Chip Roy, and I'm glad he did. I'm a huge admirer of Chip Roy, not because he's MAGA, he is his own category of being very fiscally conservative. Same with Thomas Massey. But the reality of Chip Roy is, hey, we've got a huge problem, and Dusty admits that yes, it's as he stated, 4-alarm fire with our federal debt and deficit. We've got a problem, ladies and gentlemen, and the best way out of this problem is to cut taxes and drastically cut spending while making sure our economy constantly grows. The Democrat policy has been the exact opposite of that. That is, increase taxes and care more about trying to fix little things here and there when they're going against the stream of human nature. The Democrats do not understand what they're doing. That's why I constantly say the Democrats can't govern. Until they realize that they need to completely reevaluate how they talk about education, how they talk about welfare programs, and how they talk about Medicare and Medicaid, which again has been an attack vector against Republicans. Dusty just destroyed that here because he lays bare the reality that you can't expand these programs and expect people to then be lifted out of poverty. They will then rely on these programs more and more and more. And the more you take away from them, it's like taking away a bad product from somebody. It's going to annoy you in the short term, but it's going to benefit you in the long term. It's like going to the gym, or at least being really incentivized to go to the gym. Not just because you're overweight and have a bit of a dad bod like I do. It's going to be painful, but it gets better and it's better for your health. That's the whole point behind eliminating a part of major handouts like Medicare and Medicaid. And I'm not talking about drastic cuts. I'm talking about making sure that there's no fraud, making sure that illegal immigrants aren't abusing or even using the programs at all. And this causes the Democrats to just scream bloody murder. And we're not allowing that to affect us anymore. Dusty knows exactly what he's doing here. He is giving a brilliant answer, and even this CNN host knows that he doesn't have much to go up against it, so he just allows Dusty to be great. So Dusty is riding tall in the saddle, and CNN are trying their best to try to throw a bone to their supporters, but Dusty just blew up the dam on the idea that the Democrats are really helping out the poor. They're not. The exact opposite is happening, and finally we're getting people that have the guts to admit what the problem is, talk about it in a way that makes sense, and deal with the problem at hand so that maybe, just maybe, we can start getting some good legislation that truly makes America great again and gets us out of this $36 trillion debt that more often than not, Democrat policies have ultimately given us. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.